Welcome back, folks. This is episode 78 of the Wet Shavers Roundtable. I am Douglas Smythe from PhoenixShaving.com. And to my, well, whatever side he's on, Scott Ostermiller, the clean shaver.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
Down below, panelist number 3, Mantic59.
Howdy. Howdy, everyone.
And I hope my pointing is correct. Right below me, we have Brian Twilley of Charcoal Goods, our guest of honor today.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Oh, it's so great to have you here, Brian. I have so many questions and concerns, as I'm sure everyone else out there does as well. And that being said, folks, if you have any questions for Brian or about charcoal goods, about artisan razors, about soap, so on and so forth, please leave them down below in the question section rather than in the side chat bar. But if you want to raise some hell and talk to us directly, the chat bar is great for that. So without wasting any more of your time, again, a big welcome to you, Brian. I'm just so excited to have you here today because your razors have they caught me off guard completely. I was scrolling through Facebook one day and boom, there it was. I was like, oh my God, what is that thing? It's just like it's a purple cow in a field of black and white cows. It really it popped off the page at me. I was like,
black or silver cows.
Or bronze.
Yeah, Black Angus too. But you know what I mean? It was really just, it was something else. I felt this excitement that I haven't had in me for a long time when it comes to new razors out there. And so thank you for that. You've also inspired me too. I started looking at things differently. So I just want to know, where did you come from, Brian? Like, just out of the blue. Like, how long have you been at this for?
That's the thing. I'm a complete outsider. I started, I started back in the fall of 2014. I started making just some handles, and I made a couple of DE heads back then, but just for fun. And the fact that it developed into a business was not a plan at all.
And it was 3D imaging. You were doing it first in the 3D printing, rather.
No, actually, it was. So I had a machine shop in Oregon, which had nothing to do with shaving, and someone had gotten me interested in wet shaving, and I had a Merkur, like a 180. It's like the long handle. Right. And I looked at it and I'm like, oh, okay, the shave's pretty great, but this thing's a piece of cast. There's nothing nice about it. It's for $20. Right. What do you want? And because I had the machine shop, it wasn't that far of a stretch to say, well, let's just make something that I want. Now that I know about this wet shaving, so I had no idea.
I knew it was going to eventually happen. I knew it, like, a machinist was eventually going to fall into wet shaving. And we've seen that. Like, this is the year of that too, because it's not only is it it's also Timeless, right? Timeless, they have their own shop.
Well, that's the thing.
I'm from Above the Tie too.
Yeah,
he's not a machinist though. He
doesn't have his own machine shop.
Oh,
no.
okay.
I thought he was a dentist.
Yeah, Stan's like I think a radiologist.
That's what knows.
No one knows what Stan is.
In the medical field somewhere.
Yeah, so I know. My background's in fine arts, so I hold a master's in fine arts, and the machining just was a job that I could do because you don't get a job with an art degree. Yeah. So the fact that once I learned the machining side of it, it's like, okay, well now I can bring a lot of things to reality that I might not have been able to do before.
Oh, and you certainly have. I mean, you can. Okay, so the art background totally makes so much sense to me now, because I mean, I see like Corinthian columns in some of your work. I see, just it's Roman-esque to a certain degree. It actually felt like, for those of you who don't know, and most of you probably don't know, Brian sent us a razor to pass around between the three of us for the last couple of weeks, and in using it, it felt like I was using like a replica of something, what I mean? Like when you're young, you get like the toy gun replicas, and they have like the same weight and stuff, stuff like that, or a sword.
It's true.
This was like, it felt like a replica of a razor. It was just a weird feeling that I had, but I mean, it's a razor. It shaves like no tomorrow. It's really great, mild, efficient shaver that you sent us. And now, That said, it had what was it? It was number 64, but it was also level 2. Am I right?
Yeah.
So there are a couple different series of razors that you've done now.
Yeah. So basically, I came up with 3 different base plates. You know, I looked at what everyone else was doing. You know, Stan has been doing above the tie for, gosh, almost 10 years now, right?
Oh,
And
maybe 5.
maybe, yeah. And at the time, so back in the fall of 2014, Trade was making some razors. Weber was doing their head, and that was really it. And so I started doing some research. I'm like, man, there's not much out here that's readily available where you can just like have a website and buy something. And I saw that, you know, okay, you need to have a couple different aggressiveness levels because what I like isn't necessarily what you guys like. So I came up with like a master plan, like a design, and then started tweaking it until I got what I wanted in different levels.
Interesting. So I guess let's just take it right from the very beginning. Unless you guys have questions for him right now, I'd like just like to know how you got introduced to wet shaving. Like, how did this even happen?
Yeah, it's pure accident.
It's a welcomed accident, believe me.
A lot of you guys might be familiar with Imaginary Authors niche perfumes.
Yes.
Josh, the perfumer, is also a huge wet shaver. Used to be a moderator in one of the shaving forums.
Really?
His business, where he mixed his perfumes, was right next door to my machine shop in Oregon. And I just thought, like, oh, come on, you're kidding me. This guy makes perfume for a living? Like, that's a job? And so we'd see each other once in a while, and we shared an entrance. And one day I was chatting with him, and he's like telling me, you know, hey, you should try this wet shaving. And I'm like, what do you he had this like huge collection of straight razors, safety razors, all kinds of stuff. And I was like, you actually use this stuff? Like, it's like, what are you talking about? You know, and he convinced me. He's like, here, you should try this. And he gave me some Smythe soap and some aftershave and, you know, a nice little brush. And I went home and tried it, and I really liked it. But, you know, I looked at it and I'm like, you know, this is really cool, but like, I'm just not into the quality wasn't really there.
Right.
And so the next day I went back to the shop, and this was like in November. So it's really slow time for the machine shop. I'm just sitting there with nothing to do. Got all these machines, and you got to write a check to the bank every month for the machines, whether you use them or you don't.
Right.
So I was like, you know what? I'm going to make Josh a little handle for his razor as a thank you. So turned on one of the lathes, and over a cup of coffee, just whipped out a handle and brought it over to him. I was like, hey Josh, here's like a handle for one of your little razor things. And he's like, you know, people buy those, right? I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, no, you know, seriously, like someone will pay you like $75 for that piece of brass. And I was like, okay, well, I'll make some more then. And it just kind of, I mean, it's like there was no other work to do in the shop, and at the time, it was just something interesting and fun. It was a artistic challenge. It was a machining challenge, you know. And then Josh explained that people actually like to collect these things. So, yeah. And I'm my biggest customer. You know?
No, I would. Yeah, I totally believe that. I look at this stuff and it's like, man, if I could only do this myself, I'd be unstoppable. But I mean, like your story mirrors so many of like the wet shaving. I'd like to say greats out there, leaders almost. They all have similar stories where they came to it by pure accident. And those are the ones that have the most staying power, if you ask me. It's the ones that plan for it that typically fall. You know, like what you're doing though. I mean, it's just. And now, like, this is the direction. Everyone asks, like, where's 2017 going? This is where 2017 is going, if you ask me, is these artisan razors now. I wasn't even thinking about artisan razors, but that's exactly what you're doing. I mean, these handle designs are beautiful.
Yeah, I think – sorry, go ahead.
Well, I got some questions, but you can we'll get to the demo. I'm just so excited because finally you're here. But whatever you're going to say.
I actually don't remember now.
Okay, good, because I have a question for you. Now, I look at your site and I look at your razors, and I noticed that for the bronze, you can have the aged bronze look or regular bronze, and there's no price difference. So, what does that process entail to give it an aged look that you're not charging for?
Yeah, so basically, all bronze becomes aged bronze with time,
Sure.
unless you're gonna keep it polished all the time. It's just going to turn. So
Right.
You know, all of us have seen like monumental sculpture outdoors, like, you know, the guy on the equestrian horse, the big statue. That's all bronze, but it's not shiny yellow color. It's usually a dark green or a black or a brown.
Right.
So in art school, that's what you learn to do, is to stabilize your sculpture so that it lasts and stays the same. So you can do it either with chemicals or with heat. The artist Rodin, who was a French artist, he used to have all of his assistants urinate on his sculptures.
Well, it's
So
funny
once they
because
came
that
out-
one sculpture with the tube, it looks like a tube. It looks like toilet paper to me. So it's funny that you say urinate because it just makes so much sense. Go on.
Yes, the ammonia does the reaction. So back when he was active, you didn't have chemicals, so you created them, and he had plenty of assistants helping him in his studio in Paris.
And,
So there's you just followed.
well,
Yeah, it's like you go to art school for 7 years and you kind of learn these little tricks of how to finish metal and how to make things look a certain way.
Yeah, no, and that's the unique thing about what you do is because you're an artist doing metal work, whereas like I can take it to my CNC guy, and like he knows about the metal, but he doesn't know those little tricks, things it's a whole nother palette to pick colors from if you don't mind the
No, yeah,
metaphor there,
it's certainly true.
So you're using giving an ammonia bath, or you spray it on there?
No, so I actually mostly use gunsmithing chemicals now. Early on, I was mixing some of my own chemistry because that's something I had been trained to do. But there's so many variables that you have to control, like temperature, pH level, and all this stuff. It became a little challenging. So now I buy a commercial gunsmithing fluid that's specifically designed to darken brass to a certain color that I want. And I have a lot more control over it. So every razor now looks identical.
Oh, that is great.
And if someone wanted to refinish one, I could tell them like, hey, you just order this particular chemical from this company and you'll be able to refinish your razor if you wanted to.
Very, very cool. You guys have any questions?
Also.
Oh, it is safe.
Well, do you want me to?
Well, let's just hold it up because, guys, we are giving this away. I should probably mention that. We are giving away this razor that I was introduced to a week ago, hands-on. And
Look at this box.
Yeah, I know the box. It's just so well thought of.
It's awesome.
Yes.
It
Like
slides
you
over there.
interact with this piece. You know, I mean, you really do.
Whoa.
Oh.
It's okay.
It's
okay.
It adds the age look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's part of our process.
you
We give
can
it a
tell
Scott.
this was made by it. Well, yeah. You can tell that this was made by an artist. I mean, it's different. It's differently put together, differently thought of, and so it's exquisitely done. But look at that handle, everybody.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. Put it together,
Really,
Scott.
really
Put it
nice.
together.
Okay. Hang on. Give me a second.
Scott hasn't slept in a couple days, so bear with him.
Yeah, sorry. I am a little slow today.
There we go.
Apologize about that. There we go. Mark's got
Quick
one.
draw. Oh, okay.
I got mine from West Coast Shaving. So I assume the handle is the identical handle from what you have.
Yeah.
The head is something I don't know. I don't think it's not the same because it's a full scalloped safety bar instead of the half and half like you have.
Yeah.
But this is mine. I am not giving this one away.
Well, this one is in my possession. Just kidding.
Wait, hold the hip. Now, guys, if you can
I already
see
held
this,
on to one of Brian's razors way too long. So
you got open comb on one side, and you got a straight bar on the other side. And a lot of people will think Icon when they see that. But I want to tell you, there was a Russian company. I'm pretty sure they were Russian doing it 100 years ago, or about 80 years ago. Came up with that design first. So it's not.
And the thing,
it's not Icon.
one of the things I love about this is the bottom design. So you have that ridge in the middle there that actually holds the.
It's like the old type.
blade in place.
It's the Gillette New. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
Gillette New.
Gillette
Yeah.
It's that same
I
same way
love
of doing
that.
it, and it holds it just bam right there. It's wonderful without being above the tie does the little tiny dots in there, and a couple other manufacturers will do the little workarounds on it, but there's no or double dots. Yeah.
So, folks, you can win this. This could be yours
There's no messing
today.
around.
Just go down
But
to the offers button, and you'll enter the giveaway that way. I'm sorry. Go on, Minty.
Yeah.
I will say on mine, I have a standard head that is just as well engineered. It's dead spot on for symmetry. So even the standard head is very nice.
So would that be level 1?
no, the standard heads are really like that Edward Jagger 89 clone.
Okay.
So that the basic chrome heads, they're it's like Edwin Jagger, or is it Neil Jagger, or is it Nathan or Neil?
Neil.
Neil, yeah. I mean, I think he came up with a great design, and now, of course, it's ubiquitous.
Everybody
yes.
copies it.
Yeah. Yeah, so and then my machined head, I started from complete scratch on that for the design.
Absolutely love it. Absolutely love the machined head. I mean, it's just, oh man, it's beautiful. It functions so well. It's just such a tight design. It's absolutely, it's steampunk. There, I said it again, guys.
Yeah, I was actually thinking that term earlier today when I was driving back. It was like, how do you describe the look of this? It's
relic,
not rustic. It's not vintage. And that was the term that came to mind was steampunk.
Yeah.
Well, when I looked at it, when I started looking around, it was like everyone was doing stainless steel, shiny stainless steel.
Yes.
And as an artist, there's not really much compelling there. It's like stainless steel doesn't want to be coated in anything. It's just going to wear off.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, I know a lot about working with bronze and copper and some of those bronze alloys. So this was something that I could do where I could come up with some really unique textures and colors. And
it's almost iridescent to me.
And it's going to change too. The more you use it, it's going to wipe off,
oxidize,
change. A lot of the chemicals in the bathroom, the soap, the aftershaves, all that kind of stuff has like acids and bases. So it's going to change.
Yeah, and
I love that.
Again, a little finer detail in here is the ridges in the top.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that's a functional design, but it's aesthetically, it's like, ooh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that was something when you learn, like as a machinist, you kind of learn like, okay, here's what different tools do, and here's the marks they leave, and typically you don't want to leave any tool marks. That's considered like a flaw. But because I come to it as an artist, I'm looking at it like, well, you can do some really cool textures with these cutting tool things. So that was something I learned. It's like, well, how do I take what I'm learning here in the machine shop and apply it to more of an artistic, design element?
Right.
It is something else. Okay, so we have some questions down below, guys. Let me see who's asking first. Okay, so we got one from the Danish Wet Shaver. He's asking, how long does it take? Okay, this is a great question. How long does it take to handcraft the razors you do from the starting idea to the finished product?
It's interesting. So the head design itself took me about 18 months and working on it almost every day.
Yes, I can see that.
I had the head that I'm doing now, the machined brass heads. I made probably 25 prototypes and found that just, the littlest differences there's stuff. Basically, because I came to it as an outsider, I stayed away from the forums. I didn't really look at a lot of the other designs. And
smart.
You look at it and everybody's like, oh, blade gap, blade gap, blade gap. It's that's what changes everything. And now I realize that that's actually not true at all. And there's a lot of different variables that can affect how a razor shaves. So it was just a lot of prototyping, a lot of trial and error.
Yes.
And
well,
so,
let me ask very quickly, because it's actually something that someone asked me to ask you on this, but before this even started. This was a couple of days ago. They were really interested on the different head aggressiveness setting that you have of your different heads. If you can kind of talk about, you just said the blade gap is not everything. Without going into maybe too much detail, what are the major dimensions, specifications, whatever you want to call it, for determining how mild or aggressive or efficient or non-efficient a head would be?
I felt blade exposure was one of the most critical dimensions. Just a few thousandths of an inch outside of like that sort of
sweet spot.
Arc, like it creates kind of an arc. I wish I had like little diagrams here on a whiteboard, but that's why if you look at a feather razor, the Feather ASD2, it has a huge blade gap, but it's a very mild shave, and a lot of that's because of the exposure.
Okay, so Scott, if you don't mind, I mean, for the clarification for a lot of people here, because a lot of people equate blade gap with blade exposure. What's the difference?
Right. So I think I'll see if I have a little sample. If I do the same thing.
To me, blade exposure would be the actual
space
amount of the blade from the top that is left hanging out from under, like between the edge of the blade and the actual cap.
Yeah, and you have to kind of factor in like exactly where's the skin. And I drew this head in Autodesk CAD software, which is incredibly advanced. They used Autodesk to redesign the Panama Canal. So they have basically a product design suite.
1920s?
I'm sorry?
The 1920s?
No. So when they just did the redevelopment a few years ago to widen the canal for larger sizer tankers. So Autodesk has really crazy simulation ability. So instead of just applying a straight line to the blade exposure I was actually able to basically model a face and figure out, well, when you actually jam some skin in there, what happens? And that's when I started to realize that, there's more going on here than just raising, the blade gap up or down, changing the exposure. You really have to play around with the angles and start looking at it more fluidly.
Right, which is one reason why, for instance, the Rockwell 6S, one of the biggest differences that you see in the blade in the different plates is just the gap.
Yeah.
Right, because that's really the only dimension that changes is the blade gap. The blade sits at essentially the same angle because it's just interaction between the two touch points on the bottom and the cap.
Yeah.
So that blade bends to the same angle all the time. It's just the actual blade gap allows more in under the blade.
So one of the other things I did is these faces here. So it's not just the gap, but this angle, and then there's a second angle and a third angle, and then the location of those faces. Once I started playing around with all of that, that's when I realized, like, okay, if you move this 2 degrees, this thing's going to tear your face open. You move it 4 degrees the other way, it's barely working. And that's the kind of stuff that, man, I wish I had a degree in engineering. It's because designing it to look good is one thing, but if you don't have a true understanding of engineering and how to do simulation, I just had to make every single iteration. And that's why I ended up with so many prototypes. It's like, well, how's it shave if it's 1 degree difference? We'll just make it and try it.
Yeah.
And
that's
my skin.
Awesome.
Oh, sorry.
No, well, I mean that's such, you have this huge advantage because you're the machinist. If I need to do that, because a lot of times I'm working with a guy who doesn't know anything about wet shaving, doesn't understand why I want to make the razor to begin with. So, but it costs me $1 per minute for anything I have him do. So I can only get so loose. Yeah, and that is cheap. It is. I mean, I think he's like $60. Well, yeah, $60 an hour. Where mostly they're 120 around here or 80. So I'm already working with the cheapest guy. But I mean, like for trial and error, I just don't have that much money for one, or time to really screw around like that. You are your own machinist. So I mean, like, and an artist. So I mean, the world is your oyster. Really, it's a huge advantage.
And that's what's when you don't get a master's in fine arts without learning that you have to pursue every single idea beyond like the fact that once you grow bored with it, you've just gotten started. You're not going to make great art by accident. It takes time and commitment. So you just keep going and going and going and going, and when you get bored, you just keep going some more. And it's either going to turn out great, or you're going to end up in the gutter somewhere, or a crazed drunk and never succeed. That's how the artist works.
Right, I know that's what they say, anyways.
Man, now you got me thinking I need to go visit my friend's machine shop and play around.
Now you got me thinking I need to go get drunk.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. We got some more questions down here, guys. Keep those questions coming. Danish Shaver, I hope that answered that for you, or Peter. Okay, now we got another one. Brian, where do you typically find inspiration for your razors?
That's easy. I have absolutely unlimited razor ideas. It's once I made the first one, I looked at the razor and I was like, man, this thing's amazing. It's, on one hand, you have to fit within this perfect, there's like a rule, like the razor has to be a certain size. It can't just be anything. So you have these criteria and these restrictions. And then from there, it's like, well, what kind of artistic elements can you apply to it that doesn't mess up the shave itself? So from there, it's just, that's being artist. It's just a constant sketching and drawing. And man, if I didn't have to machine this stuff, like if all I had to do was design, I would just have like dozens and dozens and dozens of razors out there.
Oh, please, man. You got such a sweet I'm just like, if I could just get in the CAD and machine it, I'd be, oh man, unstoppable. Like, artists are their own worst critics, folks.
Go to art school.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I got my degree in theater.
Now you're seriously having me sit here thinking, okay, well, I've got to, and I have like 50 irons in the fire of like things that I want to do, right? But I've been involved in a manufacturing startup that's for biodiesel processors, right? We have our own CNC machining facility. We have for these little minute parts that we make inside the processor that we mill ourselves, and got all the programming software and everything for it. And so I'm like, maybe I need to CAD something out and try it out.
Well, Scott, I think you tried the 3D printed razor I was doing, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, and that was something.
You were doing that.
It was fun.
Yeah, so that was another thing. So about the time I was finishing the design. We had moved. I didn't have a big CNC machine. It's like, all right, well, I can make handles right now, but I can't make heads. So let's just 3D print this stuff. And so that's why I got into the 3D printing. And it was interesting. I was really surprised. I thought people would be just super excited. World's first 3D printed razor, and nobody cared.
And it was a stainless 3D printed razor, right?
Yeah, it was stainless. That was the thing. There were people 3D printing plastic ones because you can get like those little plastic printers that have like a spool of plastic and it spits stuff out. But this was 3D printed on like basically $1 million piece of machinery. You know, it was.
It would have been off the hook. I mean, people should have known about that. I don't know if the word got out there, but I mean, yeah, you would think people would get more excited about that.
I think what happened was the perception is that 3D printing is cheap because you can buy your little MakerBot and you put it in colored plastic and it spits out tchotchkes.
Right.
You know, and then you have companies like Shapeways where you upload like your tchotchke model and it makes tchotchkes for you.
Right.
But when you're talking about 3D printing is in like, hey, this is going to go into a satellite, or this is going to be a piece of medical equipment. You're at a whole different level of cost and complication, and that's where that the head that Scott shaved with came from EX1, which is kind of the world's leader in like high-end 3D printing. But it's ridiculously expensive, way more so than CNC machining.
It's really about educating the clientele, so to speak. I'm currently, I don't know, somehow this is going to make sense, but I'm watching the People versus O.J. Simpson right now, and yeah, right. Just bear with me here. Now, so this is going back to, was it 95, when they're pulling in DNA evidence, which is obvious, who the guilty party is here, but people couldn't wrap their minds around DNA yet at that time. So it really didn't make a difference whether they could prove anything with DNA or not. It's the same thing, I guess, in this case, where we're not there yet understanding how 3D printing works. I mean, I remember 2 years ago trying to mentally to wrap my mind around it. Like, how do you 3D print? I mean, how does that even work? So now I've come to terms with it. But so I think it's about educating them first. But maybe you're just way ahead of your time. And to be perfectly honest, I think you are in that regard.
I thought it was really cool. Like, my plan with the 3D printing was to set up a couple models and then have people be able to customize their everything. Just like put in your blade gap, put in your exposure, put your your monogram in, and then hit send, and then I'd mail it off and have it printed. And it's like, I thought that was going to be a cool idea.
It is in 5 years when I do it.
It just didn't take.
Yeah. Like, it was basically, because 3D printing, whether you print one item or 1,000, it's the same price per unit. There's no economy of scale, and that's where CNC machining and other manufacturing methods are different. Where with CNC machining, 90% of the cost is that first item, and then after that, you got to make thousands of them without changing anything to recoup that cost. But 3D printing, every item can be custom. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Well, and when I had that 3D one, it was really interesting to me. Like, first of all, the fact that it was 3D printed and it was metal.
Yeah.
Like, when you think 3D printing, you think plastic, you think cheap, you think super light, you think inexpensive. And it was metal. It was legit, very, very finely polished metal, or not necessarily polished, but very finely crafted metal. And I showed it to my wife, and first of all, she liked the design of it. When I showed this to her the other day, and when it came to the house, she loved it. But when I showed it to her, she was like, "Oh, this is really cool. Did somebody make this?" I was like, "Yeah, actually, it was 3D printed." She's like, "Shut up! No way!" And yeah, it's 3D printed. Wait, they can 3D print with metal? Yeah. It's just different. But like, it's just one of those things that hasn't quite caught on yet, because I think it is, when people hear 3D printing, they think of the little desktop 3D printers that people make doodads out of. Or like the machine on the Big Bang Theory that they paid like $50,000 to make a whistle. And so that's what people think of when they hear 3D printing. But I agree with Douglas. Give it a couple of years, it could get there where people see the value in it.
Yeah, and I thought the cool thing was that you could just print your own razor. Basically, not everyone's going to be able to design a razor. Like, that's obvious. It takes way too much time. But everyone has an idea of how they want it to shave. So if you have like a base model that everyone it's a known good shaver, well, then you can kind of tweak the aggressiveness, the efficiency. You can get your name put on it, And that's what I thought was kind of cool, is that you get like this custom razor, but you know it's going to be a winner out of the box.
Oh, it's perfect. It's like a matchmaking site. You match
Exactly.
the person to the perfect tree. I mean, that's only
Well, and
Swipe
Sorry.
left for the perfect shave.
yeah.
And it might be an idea to just offer like the custom handle, like keep the heads all the same, just or maybe offer 2 or 3, something like that. Just keep 1, 2, 3. Those are your options, but then do the 3D printed handle. I don't know. It's just a different.
Nah, I say infinite possible. Well, have 10 designs that they can tweak out. The interchangeable aspects, top cap width,
Exactly.
gap,
Yep.
light exposure, so on and so forth. Different variables they can toy with. But I mean, almost infinite possibilities when I'm mix and matching them until they get what they want. And I mean, if it's 3D printed, it doesn't matter, Scott, if you have them in stock or not. As they're sending in the orders, the printer could be making them. You have 10 printers hooked up. They're making them as they're needed. And
Well, that was kind of part of the issue. Is so the big metal 3D printers they're very large, the ones that are capable of doing precision work, and you can't just have like one little item printed. So what you do is you work through a brokerage service where you say, hey, I'd like to have this model printed, and they say, okay, well, once we get 500 other people with their models, then we set up the print bed and get the thing going. But if you have a big enough business where you're printing multiple razors a day, then you can actually have one of these things running.
Right.
Well, I think another aspect of it is that people don't often regard 3D printing as that exact.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like the cast heads. Everyone says, oh, it's made of pot metal and it's terrible, blah, blah, blah. These are people who aren't in the manufacturing industry. In the United States,
there are crappy pot metal heads.
Right, and there are, and that's
a
challenge. So in the U.S., we actually still have a zinc casting industry, but it's a precision zinc casting industry, and it's primarily for medical applications. So there's no reason why you couldn't do a cast zinc safety razor head in the U.S. It's just going to be very expensive, and it's going to be just as accurate as a machine head. The technology's there. It's just who wants to pay for it. We'd rather have the Chinese, the Pakistanis, and the Indians do all of our zinc casting for us and then dump the chrome into the river. That's kind of the challenge in the U.S. is that we have so many regulations around metal casting and foundry work.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, there's no reason the statement that a cast head it's not accurate it's not really true. It can be. And just as a CNC machine, just because you have a CNC machine doesn't mean you're making accurate work. You have to have a trained machinist, you have to have a good product engineer, and you have to have good quality control.
Right.
Thank you for saying that. But yeah, no, as when it comes to pot metal, we've mentioned this before too. There's some great pot metal out there. And there's the fact that you can do certain geometries with pot metal that you cannot do on a machine.
Right, exactly.
I mean, like you're using a mold instead. So like they're both valuable they both have their benefits, two different animals.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. Some items need to be cast, some of them need to be stamped, some needs to be machined.
Yeah, exactly.
And the 3D printing is a crazy thing because you can do stuff with 3D printing. Like I don't know, some of you guys have maybe seen that lattice shaving brush I do.
Yes.
Like that cannot be possibly made through any other manufacturing method. That was part of the idea. Is I looked at it as an artist as well. If I'm going to make a shaving brush here on a 3D printer, I'm going to use a design that would be impossible to make through any other method. And so there's lots of possibilities.
No, that's great. That is actually using it for its own limitation, using it up to its point of limitation or its own medium, I guess, or tool would be the printer itself. Like, what can only that do? It's very interesting, a very interesting approach. Now, I have another question here. This comes from Kyler Williams. He's asking if you have any plans for a gem style type single edge razor, and that goes back to now we're talking sheet metal, if I'm thinking correctly about stamping that out.
As everybody knows, it's the year of the single edge razor. Like I learned, I started looking at doing an SE razor last year with the Artist Club blades, and so many of them came out on the market. Many of them are very inexpensive. Lots of Kickstarters are going on. Like I pay attention to all this stuff, and I looked at it, it's like, well, man, I'm really excited, but there's no business opportunity here. This is a great way to go bankrupt, is to bring another SE razor out. Yeah. But what I did find is that the Gem Micromatic, there is not a contemporary version of that. So I've been slowly building up figure out what the webcam is. I've been buying up everything I could find on eBay of every possible Gem iteration. and
Push
paying a lot of
buttons,
attention
bullet tips.
to their mechanisms.
Yes.
Mhm.
And trying to figure out, like, is this something that was part of it? These are 100% of these guys are either stamped or cast, or as you
Or
said,
both.
Douglas, there's some sheet metal work.
Yeah, sheet metal.
And
And
they're
the
actually
bottom
quite
cap is cast, I believe, and it's the 2 pins over there. So you could have them make it for you at a sheet metal place, and you would just assemble it yourself with the 2 pins, right? And am I correct there?
I've looked at maybe just CNC machining the whole thing. Like, if you're going to do a modern gem razor,
Oh,
like, make it
yeah.
the ultimate modern gem. You know,
You could totally
like, otherwise, just I paid $7 for this on eBay, and it's amazing. Like, I don't want to copy it.
Oh, I know.
I want to make it absolutely incredible.
But the spring mechanism,
Yeah.
that would be sheet metal that you would need for that, right?
Maybe, or it could be a linkage or something, like a little gear-driven linkage.
Okay.
Linkage.
Mhm.
You know, if I'm going to machine it, I'm going to make it, you know, just different than what else has been done.
Yes.
Like the Micromatic, where it's the twist bottom and it actually.
Yeah. So I have
machines
so this version of the Micromatic.
That.
I have the same
There's,
one.
you know, it's a twist to open, and there's a cam inside of here.
Mhm.
And the cam, I have to figure out what the webcam is. It's not my computer.
Oh, yeah.
But the cam pushes on the lid, and it's an absolutely brilliant design.
It's
The fact
incredible.
that they came up with this before World War II is absolutely amazing.
Yep.
I mean,
I know, we
it's-
always
and it's
say
a-
that.
I think these things sold for, they were like basically free back then. It was a disposable razor.
Lost leader.
Yeah, I looked at those and they were like, I think mine was made in like 1929, like that, like, or yeah, something like that, like 1920s. I was like, my goodness, this is older than my grandmother.
I know, but we
Yeah.
don't give them the benefit of the doubt.
That's
for the stuff
incredible.
the stuff they were doing back then. It's like, again, Matt Sarsic said this. He's brought razors, different places, adjustables. Like, there's a reason why we don't have adjustables around nowadays. People forgot how to make them. They don't know how they were
Yeah.
doing them back then at an affordable price.
Yeah, all the machinery's gone.
Yeah.
You know, and the main thing is, you know, the patent. It's all about patents nowadays.
Yeah.
You know, I see a lot on the forums like, well, why isn't Gillette ever going to bring back the safety razor? It's because you can't get a patent on it.
They're not going to make
And
it.
there's a reason why
Well, the
the modern
patents have
Gillette razor.
expired is what happened. That's what started the cartridges. The patents expired.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have to constantly get new utility patents issued. So that's why you have 10 blades, you know, moisturizing strips, balls, and, like, you know, batteries in the
And
things.
it vibrates.
Because it's the only way you can keep yourself protected.
Add a bell and whistle to it and make it more.
Right. Yes, because it's all about utility patents for the big companies.
No, it's
Yep.
true.
Well, and real quickly, Brian had mentioned the lattice brush. There was some reference to it over in the comments here, but just kind of show you guys what he's talking about.
Yeah.
So that's the 3D printed lattice brush.
Yeah, and that one's the nylon. So it's that's laser sintered nylon, and then I also do one in
Do a metal
stainless.
too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you have any video
fun.
footage of that being made, Brian? Like from the ground?
I wish. It's like these things are the place that makes these things is top secret. I've asked them repeatedly, like, hey, you know, what's the finishing process for these? We don't disclose that.
yeah.
Well, yes, there's that. That one's gold plated. I just finished that one up.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I'll ask them, like, what's the thickness of the gold plating? You know what? Like, we don't disclose that. It's like,
Yeah.
no, it's just, man, it's like black ops in there.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I mean, and that's the thing is everyone in the forums, when it comes to like the artisan world and the forums, everyone wants to know your secrets, where you get stuff like that. And some people are like more forthcoming than others, and others like Neil Jagger. He's like, I'm not giving away what I do, how I do this. It's like everyone wants to know these things, and so many people are willing to give it away. And it's like, no, like I'm not gonna give you the keys to all the castles here. Rather, you know, I'll give you my credit card before I do that, you know. But no, in the industry, people place close to the vest. People are very secretive, and for good reason. It's their livelihood.
Yeah, I think it depends on your business and the size of it. Neil Jagger, I mean, he's got a massive business with employees to protect.
Yeah.
You know, his razors are constantly being cloned and copied by, you know, Asian companies.
A lot of
So I don't
counterfeits
blame
out
him at all.
there.
Yeah. Some small businesses have made their names out of counterfeiting his razors for years. And it's true. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people that are doing.
I mean, look at like my cast head is exactly. I think it's the same thing as an Edward Jagger 89.
Actually,
it's just-
I think your head is a little gentler than an 89. Frankly, I like
See,
it.
I've actually thought it was
I like it. And I'm talking about the standard head that I have that I've been trying. I find it well
This is
within
fantastic, too.
the mild but efficient, and I would consider more comfortable than the typical DE 89.
Now, I wonder
Yeah,
if that's
as
because
you know,
the handle, though, too, Mark. I wonder if it's the weight of the handle and the fulcrum.
No, the handle is exceptionally well balanced, I will say, on the charcoal razor. That's true. But That will interact. You're right, but I think it's a really nice, gentle but efficient head.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it actually does have a lot more to do with the head. And for me, something I've noticed is the action that you get from the head has a lot to do with how rigidly it's able to hold that DE blade. Because the DE blade, you'll get on a lot of razors, you get a lot of flick in that blade. You get a lot of flex, and it's not always symmetrically done. Like you'll get a lot of wave flex in a blade. And so if a DE razor can hold that blade really nice and rigid and stiff as it's doing the shave, you get a much gentler feel from it, and you get a lot more benefit from the sharpness of the blade, so that, you know, whether you're using a feather or an Astra, you get a nice smooth cut every single time, and it really tends to leverage the sharpness of the blade without being aggressive. And so that's one thing that I think has been done really well with this. Actually, I literally just shaved with it like an hour or so ago.
Can't tell, Scott. I can say stuff like that now.
My neck.
Shaving. Okay, we are running. We have about 20 minutes left. We have a lot of questions here, and I appreciate you guys asking them. We have 52 people watching live right now and interacting with us. Way to go, guys. Great to have you all
I think
here.
this might be one of the biggest ones we've ever had.
I think our Mantic episode was the biggest. I think we had like 76 people watching at that time. But we're getting there. And yeah, so again, folks, Brian has been kind enough to offer up one of his razors for you to win today. Go to the offers panel down below, click on that to enter. And super easy to do. You just have to watch today's show, and I can see if you're there or not after the fact. Watch the entire show. Subscribe to the I'd Lather Be Shaving channel, and follow Brian on Instagram, Charcoal Goods, that is. So that link will take you to all those options, and then we'll put you in the giveaway. And we'll either announce at the end of the show a winner. Scott, if you want to do a random number draw, we could do that.
Oh, sure.
Or because I can see. Oh, actually, you know what? I can see it on the program I'm using will pick a winner for me, so we'll just do that. It's Gleam. Okay, so let's get back to some of these questions.
With TubeBuddy? Is that what you're talking?
No, it's Gleam. It's what's hosting the giveaway. Okay, this one comes from Christian Levesque. Christian asks, "Will you introduce brass and copper heads? I see you do brass base plates."
Right. Yeah. So the top cap and the base plate are solid brass. The ones that the one that I sell now, and then I'm also offering copper plating over the brass, just because it's an affordable option to make a copper head that matches the copper handle. I am looking at doing solid copper heads. Copper's obviously very, very soft, very, very fragile.
Right now too.
It's right. Yes, stainless steel is basically free.
Yeah.
In the machine shop, like running stainless at the machine shop, it's free. It's fast. Every machine shop loves running stainless.
Yeah.
You call up a machine shop and say, "Hey, I want to run some bronze alloys." Click. You know, they don't. Only very specialized machine shops want to run bronze alloys. So that's bronze, brass, copper, any of the yellow and red metals.
Yeah.
So I specialize in that, and I want to keep going with it. But I also have to be aware that if someone takes like a $300 copper razor that's solid and drops it on the tile floor, and it bends or gets broken, like I don't want to warranty that.
Yeah.
It's like it's like you're kidding me.
Yeah.
So the copper plating is kind of a nice little treat where it looks like the copper, but it has the durability of the brass.
Right. No,
people ask me like, "Oh, well, does it wear off?" It's like, well, look at everything that's gold plated. Typically, anything that's gold plated was first plated in copper. So if you look at those old vintage Gillettes that you come across that look like they're copper, that's just because the gold plating wore off.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And the copper plating's still there because the copper is very, very thick. If you have a fancy muscle car with show chrome bumpers, that's called triple chrome. It's usually you have your base metal, then you have usually a layer of nickel, then a layer of copper, then you finish all of that copper till it's absolutely flawless, and then you put a fine layer of chrome over top. And so that's how you get your show chrome.
Very cool.
Yeah, so the copper plating is pretty strong stuff.
Yeah, no, I'd have to agree. Although I created my own brush scuttle, and I thought I was buying copper components, like a copper cup. It was like one of those Russian Mule, whatever those drinks are, cups, and another little copper top. Turns out it wasn't copper at all. I thought it was solid copper. It was plated in copper, and the stearic acid in the soap, I believe, had a reaction with the copper. So now it's silver on the bottom of the cup. This is like
I see those. I see those too. Those the Russian. What's the drink that you put in those things? Russian Mule. Yeah, you see those like like their copper cups advertised for like $15.
Moscow Mule. There we go.
Like Moscow
Yeah.
Mule. If you actually made a solid copper cup that was about that shape, you're talking like $100.
Yeah, you have
like
to.
copper is brass is 3 times more expensive than stainless, and copper is 6 times more
Yes.
expensive than stainless.
I was looking into copper
So,
recently, and it's
there we go.
ridiculous. Can't go there. So that's another thing is like where you have such an advantage is not only your own machinist. Oh, that's the thing is you're your own machinist. If I want to do something in copper now I have to pay for the guy's time and the copper, and then I gotta try to sell an affordable piece to somebody, and they're gonna bitch and moan like, this is a $300 razor. No one can afford this. It's like, it's a $300 razor made in the USA. By my guy. I mean, like that's what the price is. I'm sorry, and I'm not even making 50% off of it. I'm making probably 20%. I'm barely making anything. It's just pulling people towards the site more than anything. So yeah, I wish I was in your position. It's awesome.
Well, you say that, but I'm at the point where I want a new CNC machine.
Right.
I want to it stinks. Like right now, I have almost a 1-month waiting list. I don't like that. Like I want to be able to have people just buy what they want when they want it. Like I'm an Amazon Prime guy. If it can't show up in 2 days, I'm upset.
I know.
It's like.
We're at
So yeah, I'd like to have a new CNC machine, but you go to the bank and say, "Hey, I make safety razors.
Yes.
Will you give me a loan for a CNC machine?" And they're like, "It's like, of course not."
It's subjective as with anything else. I mean, I look at you as like what you're doing. Like he's got it all figured out, and of course you're gonna have your own issues. We all do. Let's see. Okay, we got some more questions. Jason, I'm skipping your question, Jason99, because I think we kind of answered that already. Well, yeah, I think we definitely already answered that. So forgive me there. Jason number 2 with a Y. We have Brian. What kind of things are you machining before razors? Are you machining before razors? Do you draw any inspiration?
Oh, good question. Yeah, so I have a background in the bicycle industry, and I apprenticed at the basically a place that's the top manufacturer of bicycle tools in the United States. Like high-end, not the kind of stuff you go to like fix your own bicycle. It's like what you use in bicycle manufacturing, bicycle assembly, and like big bicycle shops. So that's all I did at first was, making whatever part I was given. He would give me a part, say, go make 500 of these on some lathe over here. And no drawings, just like, don't screw it up, kid. And once I started to develop an interest in saying, hey, you know what, I want these machines too. I really like this stuff. So he helped me buy a bunch of machines, restore them.
Wow.
Get a shop nearby, and then he would subcontract a lot of work to me. So mostly I just did a lot of welding fixtures, machining fixtures, and then small parts.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay, I hope that answered your question. Do you draw any inspiration? I guess you would to some extent from that past work.
No, not really.
Well, maybe the lifestyle. I know
Because
you anarchist cyclist guys out there. Steampunk.
Well, it was a lot of the brass. We used to do a lot of the brass to make brass bushings for some of the tools.
Right.
So
okay.
I had learned a lot about how to machine brass and bronze alloys.
Okay.
Which is a little. That's kind of challenging stuff.
Okay, someone's asking another question we got from Trent. Trent is asking, do you foresee stainless or maybe even titanium razor handles? The 3D brush handles on the site are incredible looking, by the way. A true artist, yada, yada, yada. Titanium ones already exist, folks, but go on, Brian, if you want to take that.
Yeah, I definitely want to do a stainless steel head this year. Not everybody can afford my handcrafted solid brass heads with the fancy finishes. I consider stainless kind of a more budget-friendly material. So I am working on a stainless razor that's going to be just the same head that you guys have shaved with here, but made out of stainless instead. And it should be a much cheaper razor as well.
What grade of stainless are you looking?
Titanium's interesting. Titanium machines just like stainless. So if you machine something as stainless, you can just make it out of titanium with very little extra work. I just don't know if it's, gosh, who wants a $400 titanium razor?
Well, I just see the ad
If
for
you do,
it, the razor like on a rock, a cockroach crawling over it, and a nuclear explosion going off in the background. Sorry. Okay, what else we got for questions? That's titanium. That's what I remember as a child. It's gonna last a blast. Okay, here we go. Okay, this is a great question. Jason's also asking, are you making a soap as well?
Yeah. So like a week after I made my first handle, a local shop in Oregon wanted to stock my razors, and they sold like really cool men's stuff, but they didn't have any other shaving gear. And I know about retail. I was like, well, look, you're not going to sell just a razor without like brushes and soaps.
Yeah.
You know, like, and I tried to explain to her, I was like, hey, like you need to like sell like a shaving kit, you know, so that you can sell it. And she's like, I don't know where to begin with this. It's like, all right, I'll figure it out. So I made a bunch of shaving brushes because shaving brushes are actually, you know, it's like just kind of turn on the lathe and make shaving brushes.
Yeah,
right.
That was pretty easy for me. And the soap was a challenge. Douglas, as you know, it's pretty easy to make soap. It's really hard to make good soap.
Yes.
So I actually outsourced that. I contacted a cosmetic chemistry company and says, hey, look, I'm going to send you a bunch of my favorite shaving soaps. I want you to just tell me how to make the stuff. And so what they did is, for a very large fee, they give you a formulation, directions, and basically like, here's how you make soap, kid. And then I knew a bunch of perfumers and said, here, I want my soap to smell like this. And then I paid them to make the perfume fragrance. So I actually make the soap, but I had a lot of professional help, basically hand-holding, you know, holding my hand and saying like, okay, here's how you're going to make a soap that's not going to like kill people. You know, so, yeah.
Right. Because who wants to intentionally do that? Though some may have been accused.
Yeah, I think I told you, Douglas. When I first started wet shaving, I got all excited. I'm going to order some soaps, and I ordered one from a soap company that was, you know, an artisan place that was pretty good. And I took one whiff of it, and it smelled like rancid, you know,
Tallow.
It smelled like a rancid hamburger.
Yes.
It was tallow,
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? If this is good soap, I want nothing to do with it.
Yeah, I want to
And
make that very clear to folks right now. I've said this before, but I feel like people are not hearing me when I say this. But tallow was just a cheap form of stearic acid they were getting back in the day. Huge corporations like Gillette and Barbasol, they were sourcing tallow because it was a byproduct of the meat industry back then, where they could get their stearic acid from to make lather in the soap. There's the traditionalists and the superstitious folks that they think tallow is a soap ingredient, and it's not. It was just a cheap ingredient back in the day. That's the only reason why they're using it. Nowadays, we have access to all these exotic butters and oils with even higher amounts of stearic acid. And I don't care where you get your stearic acid from. Stearic acid is stearic acid at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That's chemistry.
That's
So,
yes, and that's something I learned.
Yeah,
when I was originally working with the cosmetic chemist, and I said, hey, you know, I really want to do this tallow soap because that's what everybody likes, and she basically said no. She's like, we do not put animal products in cosmetics anywhere in the United States. She's like, if you ever want to see your soap in a fancy store, like a nice grocery store, she's like, it has to be a vegetarian-based formula.
Yeah.
She's like, I will not formulate a soap with animal products.
And
I was like, okay, you know,
there's a good
you're the
reason.
boss.
There's a really good reason for that. I mean,
yeah, you know, you have the PhD.
Yeah, exactly.
And she was right.
Yes, she is right.
Well,
especially with the meat industry as we know it. I mean, they're pumping these animals with steroids, GMOs, all the other stuff, and then you have diseases to consider, and then people are rendering this on their own. Like, you don't know. There's so many unknowns when it comes to using animal products in something you're going to put on your face and absorb through the skin and so on and so forth. And there's no need to even go there once you realize that the only reason why they were using that is it was a cheap alternative back in the day for just the stearic acid. That's all. Everything else is superstition behind this.
Well,
Sorry.
And, to that point as well. So like I mentioned, I've been involved in a biodiesel startup, right? And so we've discovered that it doesn't matter, you know, to make biodiesel, you have to have a fat, a triglyceride of some sort, and then you combine it with an ethanol of some sort, a methanol, and you know, your end result is biodiesel and glycerin, essentially. But it really doesn't matter where you get the triglycerides from. They can be plant-based, they can be animal-based. It doesn't matter. Both of them act the same way in the end. And so it's just chemistry, right?
Yeah, it is also garbage in, garbage out. If you start with very high quality, very high purity ingredients from reputable suppliers, you will get great soap. If you get online and order just some junk that's like from some soap company, like, or soap, like, you know, craft store, like, you don't know what you're getting.
Yeah.
So it's just, that's how it works. You have to start with good ingredients.
Especially when you look at the retail cost of a certain soap and it's like $6, then you got to wonder how much are they actually paying for the raw ingredients they're using. That will also tell you where it's coming from. And no, this isn't a bad.
And that's
thing.
not to say that there aren't good tallow soaps. Yeah.
No,
well,
no, my favorite soap is Mitchell's Wolf Fat. I love it. You know, it's
good tallow. There's good tallow. There's bad tallow. There's good veggie soap. There's bad veggie soap. It comes down to the formula and the person coming up with the formula at the end of the day. It's a good cook versus a bad cook. They can use the same ingredients, but I mean, it really depends on the skill and the recipe at the end of the whole shebang.
Yeah.
Okay, we got some more questions here to try to fit in the next 5 minutes. I don't understand this. This question is coming from Tim, and I'm not sure if I understand the question. He's asking if you offer a demo set or a trial period. I guess like a guarantee or.
Yeah. So obviously, there's not as much about my razors on the forums as some others, and I understand that. So what I've been trying to do is, if I have blemish heads or defect heads where they just don't pass my visual inspection, but they're going to shave okay, I have been sending those out for demo use. That way someone can try it out, maybe write a forum post and say, hey, this level 1 shaves like this level 3, it shaves like this head I have here. So when I have them available, I do send them out. I've had a ton of email in the past couple of weeks. So right now, demo heads I have a waiting list for them. But yeah, just send me an email if you want to get on the list. And when I get demo heads back from people, I'll send one out to you.
Nice.
Free, as long as it's free, they want it.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And it's, I'll keep doing the demo program for as long as I get to the point where people are no longer asking questions about like, well, what does your head shave like? Because I wouldn't buy my stuff. Like if I was a consumer, it's like, I'm not going to give some random guy $200 for some razor I've never even heard of.
Well, I can say right from now, from my site Sharpologist perspective, I'm definitely going to be writing something up on, at the very least, the standard head that I have. I just ran an article just a few weeks ago about good, gentle razors. And I'm planning an update on that, actually, maybe even as soon as next week. And one of the updated razors that I'm going to talk about is just your standard standard base plate charcoal. The base. This I just got here. And as a matter of fact, Douglas, yes, I'll be also mentioning the DOC. But
high five, Brian.
So, but I think it definitely deserves some buzz. Yeah, props. Yeah, for some really
You're
fine.
Shaking it up. You're shaking it up.
Really finely balanced. Finally, the look is just so unlike a lot of things I've seen. The kind of the only thing that I could think even comes close is the Hone razor. But even that, it doesn't have the variations and the, for lack of a better term, the patina of something like this. And paired with the different heads you can get, I think you'll be able to please just about everybody. And quite frankly, at least with the standard head, I'm actually surprised how affordable it is. I mean, yes, it's more expensive than a Merkur HD or a DE89 or something like that. But I've seen a lot of artisan razors go for a lot more than this and not do as well.
Yeah, I've tried to kind of make it so that some stuff's affordable. I realize that the solid brass heads with your logo, your name engraved on them, they're very expensive. I understand that. And there's a lot of time involved in there, but I want people to be able to buy a razor for under $100 too and have something pretty cool. And the reality is not everybody's going to like my stuff. Like, part of what I do is I really like the relic look, the vintage look, that steampunk aesthetic. If you want a flawless, shiny stainless steel razor, like I'm not your guy. Get a Timeless, get on James, get on the Wolfman list. Those guys can polish to nobody's business. But yeah, like I think what you liked about my razor is the fact that it's not perfect. It has little dings and dents, and it is something that looks like it came out of a 100-year-old time capsule.
Yep.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, definitely not for everybody. I think some people are gonna. It's usually a love or hate thing. I found with my stuff.
As with most things in life, it seems, especially when you're an artisan. Guys, it's 5 now. Do you want to go over for another 5 or 10 minutes, just to finish up these questions? Or do you guys?
I'm happy to stay as long as you guys need me to. I'd love to keep answering questions.
Okay, we just.
We cut off at these questions.
I just, and I see someone's talking. It looks like Chad brought up something about how he loves glycerin soaps right now, and I just want to clarify that all true soap is glycerin soap. Soap is glycerin is just a byproduct of saponification. What they're referring to is a melt and pour, I think, which is it's a misnomer calling it glycerin. So I just want to make that clear. Okay, what's going on down here? Okay, so we get to the, do you offer a demo set? Okay, what's been your biggest setback so far? But this comes from Michael K.
Oh man, the move. So I started in December 2014. That was when I first started making some handles. And then that spring, my wife got into a nursing school in Maryland. So it's like, all right, well, selling the machine shop, we're moving. That's the way it's going to work. So we've been in Maryland now for 2 years, and you don't just put like a bunch of machines in like a U-Haul truck and like go. I mean, this stuff's like, you're talking like 5 tons, 7 tons, like stuff's heavy. So I sold everything I had in Oregon. We moved to Maryland. I've got a shop 200 feet from the house right now where I have some small machinery there, and I lease some time occasionally at another shop where the guy lets me use some his equipment. So the biggest setback has been not having consistent access to the machines I want to use. And then we're moving again. She's finishing school in June here. So we're going to move back to the West Coast, either Oregon or Washington, wherever, if she gets to whatever hospital's hiring, that's where we're going. And then I'll just go through the process again, sell this machine shop, buy another one. And, that's just the kind of stuff that keeps you up at night where it's like, man, I got orders coming in, I got designs I want to do, and, where am I going to make them? You don't just wake up one morning and say, hey, this is 3,000 square feet. We're going to fill it up with a bunch of machines by the end of the day. That just doesn't happen. Yeah, so that's the biggest challenge.
Right, because orders are going to start coming in, especially after this show, too, by the way. So sorry about that.
Yeah, no more shows. No more shows.
Okay, guys, before we move on to the next question, Scott has to out.
I have to know. Sorry.
Is Christian Levesque, are you there? Christian. Okay, Christian, I'm pulling you in. Are you okay with that? Okay.
Just grab some. Take it easy, everybody. I gotta get some sleep.
Take care, Scott.
Bye-bye.
I've been up for 36 hours. I gotta get some sleep. So.
Yes. Good luck with that, Scott. Tell Noah
Thanks.
we all say hi.
I will.
Okay.
See you, everybody.
Take care, man. Okay, give me 1 second. Christian, I'm sending you an invite. Christian is Scott's understudy. He's great with Shakespeare, too. Okay, invite heading your way, Christian. Let's move on to one of these other questions now.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Christian. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Okay, here's a question coming from Chris Coyle. Scott, will we see a beard off? Oh, Scott. Scott's gone.
Yes.
There's only Zool. Okay. Okay, this comes from Jason99. Good. I'm glad Jason's asking another question. Felt bad about that last one. Okay, here we go. Do you control all modifications to your website alone, or do you have somebody else do that?
Oh, the website's a disaster. So I want to spend my day out on the machine shop making stuff.
Right.
That's all. Like, because of the way my business works, if I'm not in the machine shop making something, nothing's happening. There's nobody else to help. And of course, but you have to have a website. And so just right around the end of the year, I transferred my website to Shopify, which is obviously pretty common, like small business web host, and it stinks.
No, it doesn't. What are you talking about? Shopify's awesome.
Well, I need a team of like Ajax programmers right now to make this thing work the way I want it.
Mine's customized. And Shopify, I think it's a great platform. In fact, anyone looking to invest in the future, Shopify. Yeah. 5 years, put everything you have in it right now. I guarantee a huge turnover.
Yeah. I mean, I can't complain too much. For a one-man business, it works pretty well. Yeah. But a lot of people get confused. There are so many people that don't even know the difference between brass and copper. Right. They don't realize that like copper is the color of a penny. So I have to do a lot of order follow-up and say, hey, is this exactly what you wanted? Because I think what you ordered isn't what you wanted. Right. And then I'll send them pictures and they're like, oh yeah, that's not what I want. It's like, okay, that's what you ordered. So a lot of it's just trying to help folks out and say like, look, I realize this isn't shiny stainless steel, so I'm going to try to help you out and say like, is this the right finish? Is this where you want your name put? What exactly did you want to get here? Right. And the new website is just, it seems like a lot of people are getting confused, and I'm trying to work on it and make it a little easier to understand.
Yeah, it's not so user-friendly on like our end, like if the owner's end when it comes to customizing a Shopify store. There's only certain templates you can really work with. You really have to.
But that's the problem. It's like, it only works. There's like you have to like work within their little rules. Yeah. And my business falls outside of that category because of the way I operate. Yeah. And then hired some of their little helpers to fix it, and they just make it worse.
No, they don't, because they don't care. They're not invested in it. You need to pay someone to actually do it for you. Because I mean, even with me, like trying to put together shaving kits, selling each component to the kit, like you can't do that on Shopify. You have to have someone come in there and do coding for you. So yeah, I can see what you mean by that.
And I'm trying to make things simpler because I want people to make sure they can get their orders in the way they want them, and that I don't have to keep calling and emailing and saying, like, what's going on here, because I really need to be out in the shop.
Exactly.
I actually had to put just this past week, I had to put an out of office reply on my email and said, like, look, I'm getting so many emails. I'll get back to you, but it's going to be a couple of days. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And because it's just, I don't have anybody to help me.
No, I hear that. It can be tough.
And even like, what would I do? Hire somebody to answer emails, and like they wouldn't know what to do anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing, a tough thing about being an artisan. It's a totally unique business model, and it's not something you could even sell. Because then you'd have to sell yourself also, and you can't scale it to sell ever. I mean, like it's a 100% pure artisan business. I mean, like a year ago, I never understood how Wolfman Razors had an 18-month waiting list. I'm like, what is wrong with this guy? Like, does he just like not have like a CNC machine that works properly? Like, what's his deal? And now I completely understand. Because he's probably making about 30 razors a month. He's hand polishing everything. Yes, he's hand polishing.
Right now, you can't be answering emails when you're hand polishing.
That's what we do.
You have to be polishing.
Brandon and I are both hand polishing our razors as well, and it's tumbling.
Yeah, like right now, I'm limited to about 25 full razors a month, and that's working 7 days a week. So yeah, it's a challenge.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Okay, here we get another question from Daniel Morales. Razors obviously look amazing. I can't see mine, but how difficult was it creating your shaving brushes? Also, do knots compare to anyone else's current out there?
The shaving knots, is that the question?
The first part is asking how difficult your shaving brushes, and the second part was, do the knots compare to anyone else's knots out there currently?
Yeah, so I'll answer the second question first. The knots come from APS Shave Co. Yeah, he's in Canada. He exclusively gets synthetic knots. And I wanted to find a synthetic knot supplier that had a good reputation, and so I'm buying all of my knots from him right now. The first part, shaving brushes themselves, man, there's like unlimited creativity with the actual brushes. Like I could, if I didn't have, there's just so much cool stuff you can do with brushes. The 3D printed stuff was a little more challenging because what you design in CAD software and what you get from the 3D printer are not the same thing. There's a lot of scaling that happens, deformation, and you have to be aware of like how the printing process is occurring, like what orientation. So that metal lattice shaving brush, that took a lot of prototypes and back and forth with the 3D printing company to make sure it worked.
Right, because structural integrity, I mean, totally, it's you got to have it down to the minutest number for the strength. I mean, that to hold. I mean,
right. So what happens is, once they 3D print it in the stainless steel, it's basically like it's like a sandcastle. It's wet sand.
Right.
And then it has to be hand transferred from the printing bed to a furnace where they infuse it with bronze. And that hand transferring process is really challenging. And typically it's low skilled laborers that are doing that. You're not paying a guy $100,000 a year to do that. You're paying a guy $10 an hour.
Right.
So there's a lot of mistakes that occur from the printer makes perfect prints, but then they make a lot of mistakes by the time they do the finishing work.
Oh God!
And actually get the brass infused inside the stainless.
Yeah, the more parts of the process, the more room for error there is. I've been finding out even my own razors getting sent from one place to another, and losing half the job at the anodizers when you're almost done, like you're the finishing line, you're like, and then they've lost parts. It's like that you've spent $50 a piece on or whatever.
I have with the 3D printed products, I factor about a 50% loss rate.
Yeah.
From what I order to what actually I can sell.
Ouch.
Yeah.
And that's 50%.
And that's what you people are paying for out there too. When you complain about the price, you don't understand all that goes into it. I mean, you got.
Yeah, I just throw it in the garbage. Yeah. Like if it shows up from the printer and it's like, oh hey, somebody ground a chunk out of it. They don't care. The printer doesn't care. They just. They're like, don't do business with us again.
Yeah,
they don't care at all.
And that's when
I just throw it in the garbage and buy another one.
People bitch and moan about, it's got to be made in the USA, made in the USA. I used to agree with that until I started doing a lot of business in the United States with these small companies. They don't care about us. They don't care about you. If they didn't screw up your job, they're not going to give you your money back. You got to ask so many questions.
Just ask Rockwell.
Yeah. They're not going to.
Yeah, and I had heard that Rockwell had production problems,
Mhm.
and a lot of that is. I know we like to think that Rockwell's a big business. They are nothing.
No.
You know, if so I originally had talked to a miniature zinc casting company about doing a U.S. made cast head, which you know obviously the Rockwells are that. They wouldn't talk to me unless I was interested in the minimum of 10,000 units per year.
Yep.
And it was a $40,000 fee up front
For the mold.
before I did anything.
Oh,
just for mold.
yeah. Yeah, and the people.
And I was like, hey, if you can't front 40 grand and guarantee a $10,000 unit, you know, per year, we don't want anything to do with you.
Yep.
Because they're making, you know, little medical parts. They're making them by the hundreds of thousands, and they're charging a huge rate for them because it's you know, some precise like part for medical equipment or something like that, or an implant. Who knows?
Yeah. No, it's.
But yeah, in the U.S., that's the challenge.
Yep.
U.S. manufacturing has what little is left is at the highest end, or it's the opposite. You know, you have very small shops doing kind of like, you know, automotive machinery, but like at the very low level, not like NASCAR and like Formula One. Like, you know, we're talking like really low level stuff. The shop that I apprenticed at was a tool company, but you know, they don't take on outside jobs. They just do their own stuff.
Or they're learning on your dime.
So
it seems like they're learning what you want the job that you want them to do on your dime. So it's like,
yeah, and I've made that mistake too. It's, you know, it's a challenge to sometimes take on work that you can't do because you want the job. So you say, sure, I'll make that. And then you realize like a couple days later, man, I don't want to make this at all. And I'm screwing it up anyway.
Yeah. Yep. No, it's true. And, you know, even when you get stuff done outside the country too, at the end of the day, the most expensive part is the mold, it seems, when it comes to these jobs. Like you pay a lot, thousands of dollars up for that mold, and people don't realize that. But
yeah, even the largest shaving manufacturing company in the world, like when we're talking like artisan and niche stuff, like maybe it's Mercer or Mule or Edwin Jagger, they're still nothing. Right. You know, they're so small compared to like other manufacturers in other industries.
Oh yeah.
So it's very hard to have buying power and to have control over anything because, you know, nobody wants to talk to you.
Yep. No, it's true.
You know, you're just not big enough. So that's why I own my own stuff. You know, I want to keep owning my own shop because I can make running changes if I constantly make running production changes.
Stop on a dime. See, that's the difference with artisans versus these corporations. Is like they can't change their formula mid-year, mid-quarter, but they've already invested in all this raw ingredients that they got for a good price because they bought it in bulk. They're not going to change their recipes. Where us as small artisans, we can stop on a dime, change up what we need to, and move on. You know, we can adjust where we have to. We have more dynamic than like these bigger corporations. Plus, you can get us on the phone or an email or a PM at the end of the hour. You know?
Yeah. I think what's really cool though is an increasing ability for the average guy who has like Scott was just saying before he left, for the average guy to boot up some Autodesk CAD software, you know, export a model to a 3D printing company like Shapeways or iMaterialize and have something show up in the mail. And you know, most people listening now, like you can download Autodesk Fusion 360 for free. It's a free CAD CAM software for like hobby use. It has an export to 3D print option, and then you could just upload your model to Shapeways, and man, you know, you can have your own little 3D printed shaving brush in about a week.
So one more time.
Now, whether it's going to fit or not, I don't know, but you know, give it a try.
It's Autodesk. What's it? The program?
Yeah, so Autodesk is a $5 billion company. They're massive. But one piece of software they sell is called Fusion 360, and it's a CAD CAM package. So CAD is computer aided design, CAM is computer aided manufacturing. So the software both lets you draw things in 3D, but also will output the code required to operate machinery.
Right.
Now, if you're just doing some 3D printing, once you have the CAD model, there's like an export button, and it creates a file that could then go to any 3D printer.
Right. Okay.
And there's no reason why any of you guys out there right now, man, a shaving brush is the first thing to start with. You can draw most like of the cool shaving brush shapes and profiles, you can draw on CAD software in about 5 or 10 minutes. And then just from there, it's like 3D printing it and saying, okay, well, it showed up 10% smaller than I expected. So now I need to increase it and try another one.
And you're working with all numbers when you're doing CAD CAM stuff. I mean, like it's because I'm
no. Nowadays it's just like man, you're just like it's like Photoshop or Illustrator. You're just sketching and drawing stuff.
Okay,
it's super user friendly.
Because that's what's always scared me out. Because I'm a whiz when it comes to Illustrator or Photoshop, but CAD CAM. I remember
if you can use Adobe Illustrator is vector based. If you can draw some stuff in Adobe Illustrator, you're a CAD guy now.
Oh, perfect. Just what I wanted to hear, Brian.
Yeah, you should. Yeah.
Okay. We have another question here.
If
I'm sorry.
I'll let let the questions that people have typed in go first. I had a question, but I'll wait.
No, Christian,
sorry.
what do you got?
The question was, like, you're an artisan. You've created an interesting design for the head. You know, figuring out the aggressivity of it, and the handles are all based on, you know, your artistic inspiration. And you have many more ideas with different designs, different materials, and you're managing your business. Will there be a point where you're going to say, I'm going to need some help? And then which section of the business would this person be in? Would you get an apprentice person to help you, you know, work the lathe? Or would you get someone to be the back office, order fulfillment, and business end of it?
Yeah, and that's an excellent question, and it's a very sad state of, like, what I will tell you is not going to make anybody happy. My big purchases are going to be increasing in automation. I want to order a Haas machine. They are the U.S.'s largest producer of small CNC machinery. I want to order more Haas machines,
Okay.
and have them help me make parts. I'm not going to hire anybody to, like, make stuff for me. You know, I'd rather have the robot do it.
Okay.
If anything, I'm going to hire a minimum wage helper to put orders in boxes. That's all my business could grow substantially with just a couple minimum wage helpers.
Yeah, because you said you had many ideas that you want to execute, but it sounds like right now you're locked in just to fulfill the current order. Your funnel is loaded.
Yeah, the hold up right now are the machines. I need new machinery. It needs to be faster, more modern. Right now I have problems where, you know, I run a program on the machine when I do the CNC stuff, and, you know, it's like, man, something went wrong. You know, the cutter just went right through the vise. Don't know why. Now I got to go look for a servo error. You know, it's my stuff's old.
Oh, okay.
And I have to track it down, and I need a CNC machine that I turn on, it runs. And, you know, that kind of stuff's expensive, but once your business grows to a certain point, the reliability is more important.
Okay, interesting.
Okay, great
Thank
question, Christian. We have a
Yeah, it is an excellent question, because it's something as a small business, you know, I have to think about it. Like, where do I want to invest my money? And it's not going to be in labor and helpers. It's going to be in technology and automation.
Yeah, well, you see, that's the thing. Your business is characterized by an artisan approach. So there's art involved.
Yeah.
It's not just science.
Yeah.
But you've managed to create a product that can be left alone to the binary world to output, but you're still creating. You know, that's the skill right there.
Most of my time is spent doing the finish work.
Yeah.
And I know that's the same for some of the artists and makers, is that the stuff doesn't put its surface finish on itself. That all has to go on by hand.
Yeah. Okay, next question. How rigid are the 3D printed handles for your brushes? From Ian Ryan.
The plastic ones are not rigid at all. They're like squishy almost.
Oh.
But what I found is if you squish them too much, they crack.
Oh, do they really?
Yeah, it's like they are kind of springy because it's a lattice. And I was like, well, that's kind of neat. It's springy. And then I was like, crack. I was like, oh, okay, well, it's not that springy. The stainless, on the other hand, is quite rigid. It's the stainless 3D brush is like 2 or 3 millimeters thick of stainless infused with some bronze. And that would be very, very strong.
Good to know.
But yeah, the plastic ones, yeah, they're you can break them.
But they can probably bounce back from the floor a lot easier than a metal one that would have a souvenir left on it, right?
Yes, for sure.
Well, you could do like a finger trap shape too, where you're like Edward brush bristle hands. Like, can't get it off my finger though. No, you have to put it together. Never mind. Okay.
But the funny thing is, part of the design of that was to get the price down. So 3D printing, you pay for the volume of the material.
Right.
And so I said, okay, well, let's start cutting some holes in this thing and get it lighter, because right now it's too expensive. And then the fact that it looked cool was a byproduct.
Yeah.
This is great.
No,
it got cheaper and it looks better.
Yes, when that works out, it's really, it's like Picasso during his blue period. I think he was just trying to save money on paints, if you ask me. Okay. Yeah. Here we go. From Chad Burns. How long to? Oh, geez. How? He's asking how long till you and I collaborate, Brian, on a special artisan razor. That's kind of interesting. That's almost like when two people ask me like when I'm going to collaborate with another soap maker. It's like you can't really collaborate like that. I mean,
the collaboration's tough.
Yeah.
What I actually do contract design work. So I've actually designed a bunch of other razors for other companies.
Oh, maybe we'll do that then.
Handles,
yeah.
Yeah, so that's something like, I do that right now, and I can't say who I do it for, but yeah, I actually, my background is an artist, so I've got plenty of ideas and designs. Man, if you want to hire me as a designer, great. I'll design you new razors, and you can have them for yourself.
Yeah, maybe we'll work in that like capacity in some way. I'll just hire you to do my CAD drawings, and you add your little twist to it, and there we go, instant
collaboration. Yeah, that's exactly what I do.
Yeah. So, that's good. Thanks for that question, Chad. That actually was more inspiring than what I thought it was going to be.
A razor.
Well, yeah, like I'd love to have Douglas do a soap for me, but he's not going to want me to tell him like, oh, Douglas, Douglas, I really like to have a little more frankincense in that scent you worked on there. It's like, he doesn't want to hear that from me. He wants me to say, hey, I love your soap.
Exactly. No, I've done that in the past.
Like,
I've taken like special orders for certain big places to do their soap. And if I used to let them, come up with their own scent, but that's a dangerous place to be, because if you're not in love with the scent, you're gonna, and that's exactly what happened with this particular soap I was making. It made me so sick in my stomach. I was never looking forward to making it. I think it's just, and that all passes on to the product too at the end of the day. So it's like, you got
that's the difference between. Yeah, that's the difference between an artisan and a real business. The perfumer I worked with for my soap, they don't care. I told them what I wanted it to smell like. They said, yes, boss, because that's their job. But as us being artisans, I get emotionally invested in everything I work on. Mm-hmm. So if somebody tells me like, I want you to design this handle and I want it to look like that, and it's like, I don't care. Like, I want to design the handles the way I want it to look.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's where we're lucky. Both you and I, Brian, I think, is lucky that people also enjoyed what we were pretty much doing for ourselves.
Right, exactly.
That's like I said, accident, like these businesses that pop up like us, because like I originally made my soap because I was looking for the right soap for my situation, for the scent that I wanted, and I'm grateful enough that other people were actually into what I was doing, because I wasn't going to bend for anybody really. It wasn't a Me Too business.
Yeah. And it either works or doesn't. People either like what you do or they don't like it, and and that's just the way it works.
Yeah. No, that's definitely the artisan mindset. Okay, so Chad, I hope that answered your question. We have 2 more questions left. Oh, this is an interesting one. This comes from Tim Mall. He's asking, can you make a razor from ebonite? It's a specialist kind of hard rubber or plastic. I think it's a resin, isn't it? Ebonite? Do you know that one?
I'm actually not sure.
That's a clear material. It's like acrylic, I think.
Does it have a trade name?
Ladies that dance in the night in ebonite shoes, I believe.
I don't. If I'm sure ebonite has a true like trade name or a certification name. Some of those plastics are machinable. Some of them are only castable. So like Delrin, a lot of you guys have heard of Delrin, which is a type of acetyl resin. That's machinable, but you don't cast it. But then like acrylic, typically you cast that. You don't necessarily always machine it. So I'm actually. Oh, it looks like somebody here, and I finally realized there's like little comments on the side of the screen.
It's like bowling balls. They make bowling balls with them.
It's vulcanized rubber. It's a hard rubber.
Yes, it's vulcanized rubber. I have no idea. And a lot of times, some of that stuff gets ground, so you don't actually machine it. It's all through grinding and surfacing, like through abrasives. Is how you would form everything. So yeah, I actually don't know.
Yeah, I'm because Bakelite is almost similar in that regard. Like I could get rods made and then put them on a lathe and make brush handles out of Bakelite if I wanted to.
Yeah.
But good question, Tim. And out of left field, thanks for educating us on that. Okay, now our last question is, well, it's it's prefaced with silly question. Oh yeah, and this is probably the best question of all. How did you come up with the company name? Because that's been baffling me too. Yeah, where does Charcoal Goods come from?
I didn't. So I'm terrible at branding, like all that kind of stuff. So a friend of mine does brand design and development. He now works for IBM. Wow. So so he's a pretty big guy up there in IBM. But at the time he didn't. And I said, hey man, I'm like, because I have a machine shop, and the machine shop doesn't need a name. It's got a door. You come in, you make, give me stuff, I make it. I didn't even have a business card. So but now I'm making razors. I got to set up a website. You need like a .com, and I'm like, man, look, I need some help here.
Yeah.
Like just like make me a brand identity package. I need like a logo, like a .com, and like just figure out all the details. I don't care what it's called. And so Charcoal Goods. And he had like he gave me this whole dossier of like all my company colors and like what the text was going to look like, and this whole like brand identity package. Yeah, like he had actually written like an essay about like what charcoal goods meant and how it stood, and like how it related to machining, and how charcoal was related to carbon. And I was like, wow, that's totally crazy. Where's the logo? just email me the logo. So yeah, I really appreciate it. He put a ton of effort into it, and he's working on a new logo for me now. And but yeah, I had nothing to do with it.
No, but that's interesting though, because that's what you want. You want a brand identity. I mean, a lot of people come to these things last. And this guy did all the work, all the footwork for you first. So that's great. You're going to eventually turn back to this stuff. But
yeah, I had previously worked for Nike for a little while. And so you actually learned quite a lot at Nike about brand management, and realized I wasn't good at it. So that they had professionals there that do that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, it's
so that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to start a new business here. I'm going to have to hire somebody for this part.
It's good that you did that. I was lucky enough to, when we rebranded after How to Grow a Mustache, Phoenix was something we were weighing on for a long time. Weighing it out, like what does that mean? Just we're trying to come up with everything, and like Phoenix has more than, it was originally duality. Then it was like this triple threat. It was like not only is it the Phoenix, not only are we in Phoenix, but it's also the rising from the ashes, and ash is what is pretty much where the first soap comes from. Dating back to ancient Greece and a volcanic eruption. But yeah, and that's a lot of people just don't even realize that. But somewhere at the back of their mind, in archetypical places, reptilian zones, I'm sure that they somehow get it on some psychological level. Oh, we hope. But okay, I think that might be it for questions. Any more questions, guys? If you have it, we're pretty much wrapping up. We have about 3 minutes left. We've gone over about a half an hour today. So great show, guys. You guys are truly the lifeblood of the show. You guys over there in the chat room, really making this into something special today. Now, what I'm going to tell you is the platform I'm using for the giveaway. I can't seem to stop it right now. So I'm actually going to announce the giveaway tomorrow in the edited replay of this. I'm going to put it up on the screen in a bubble or something like that, who the winner is, and we'll get that razor out to you Monday morning. So I just want to put that out there right now, and let's see if we have any more questions. Okay, I think this is going to be our last one. This is from the Danish Wet Shaver. By the way, Danish Wet Shaver or Peter, talk to me more about that forum soap in a PM or on Instagram after the fact. Okay, and his question to you is, do you ship international?
Oh, yeah. I'll ship anywhere the U.S. Postal Service delivers. Yeah, so it doesn't matter, any country.
That's what we.
Yeah, and the website should actually calculate, the shipping for you.
It will.
So
if
just
done right.
Yeah.
There's also some.
Yeah, just if you send me an email if you can't place the order on the website, but it should.
There's a great app out there too for Shopify, Brian, that will calculate the shipping on any given day. So you're never paying too much or too little.
Really?
Yes. Yeah, it'll do it for you. I think you might have. You have to pay for this app, but at the end of the day, it's totally worth it. It will save you money in the long run. It'll save everyone money.
I'll have to ping you for some Shopify advice.
Yeah, by all means, feel free to pick my brain. After the collaboration and whatnot. But thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Christian, Mantic, great having you guys with us, as well as Scott, wherever you are. If you guys have any more questions, Mantic or Christian, before we go?
No, I'm very curious about charcoal goods now. I looked at the site quickly earlier this week, and then a friend of mine who I just converted last week, who's big into shiny metal, mentioned charcoal goods. I said, what a coincidence. And I'm sure he's unavailable today, but he's going to watch the show tomorrow. So anyways, this has been a fantastic show. I learned a lot, and it's a good one. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
As did I. Thank you so much, Brian, for sending us the razor, for giving that to our audience, and it's just an absolute pleasure. We'd like to have you back on in the future, maybe 6 months from now, to see where you're at and what's going on. And keep going. I think you just have such a bright future with charcoal goods. Keep it up, and keep inspiring the rest of us, and upping our games as well. Because what you're doing is it's so inspiring. I can't stress that enough. It's great to have someone like you.
Well, thanks for the support, guys. As an outsider, I really appreciate it.
You're more than welcome, my friend. Okay, folks, this has been episode 70 of the Wet Shavers Roundtable. Please give us a like. Please subscribe to our channel, and please join us next week in episode 79 for another scorching episode of, the Wet Shavers Roundtable. Until then, Shave on. Thanks, guys.